Point Nemo is the most remote place on Earth, where periodically the closest humans are actually those travelling overhead in the ISS. That actually changed recently when two explorers, father and son Chris and Mika Brown, decided to embark on an epic expedition to Point Nemo and even swim in its waters. I'm joined today by Chris and Mika because I want to find out all about this incredible adventure. So guys, it's great to have you in the studio.
Hi.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
How does it feel to be back on dry land?
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, can't get enough of it. Absolutely cannot get enough of it.
When you've been in the South Pacific for 3 weeks, you just want land.
I can only imagine. And before we dive into what I believe is a harrowing experience of deep sea conditions, for people who aren't familiar, what is Point Nemo?
It's one of the world's poles of inaccessibility. So a pole of inaccessibility is the point that's furthest from the ocean in any direction. And Point Nemo is the oceanic pole of inaccessibility, which is the point furthest from land in any direction. Quite specifically, there's 3 islands, Easter Island, Pitcairn Island and Mare Island in the Antarctic. And it's 2,688 kilometres from each of those islands.
Incredible. So a long way away. And what was it that drove you to want to go there?
It's one of the poles of inaccessibility, and it's a self-set task that I'm trying to become the first person to visit them all.
Fantastic. And is it true that for this specific pole of inaccessibility that you guys may be the first humans to have passed through that specific coordinate?
It's possible. It's not a claim that I'm making myself. If you read up anything about it, it says it's the maritime professionals say it's quite likely nobody's ever been to those coordinates. We know there's been some research vessels in the area. We know that the Oceanic race goes near that point, but I checked with the organisers of the race and they said that Nemo wasn't a mark. A mark is a place specifically that they have to go to and show they've been there. So it's quite possible that nobody's been there. Equally, somebody might have been. I think we're the first people to record it. And anyway, we now know somebody has been to Point Nemo.
Yeah, it's an amazing achievement. And when you're travelling to a place as remote as Point Nemo, are there specific weather systems that you have to plan for?
Yes. Would you like to tell them what the captain said about 40 and 50 degrees?
I can't remember what he said about 40 degrees.
I'd say below 40 degrees south, there is no law.
Yeah, and then below 50 he said there's basically no God. So you're just completely and utterly exposed to the conditions. You're going to have to just deal with what you get given. And I think Point Nemo was 49 degrees?
Close to 49, yeah.
Yeah, so we were kind of dealing with whatever the God wanted to throw at you, kind of hurricane here, winds there. But I mean, when we were setting off, we looked and the whole weather system just in the Pacific Ocean is just an absolute mess. There's just wind swirling around here. There's waves going there. And it seems that the west coast, so where Chile is, just gets battered all the time. So regardless of when we had to leave, we're kind of, going to deal with some serious weather. And yeah, we kind of just ended up going the captain said that we were looking, he gave us a window, didn't he?
Yeah, so we were wanting a quiet window at Nemo so that we could get into the sea and have a swim. And if we wanted to get there before a hurricane came through, we had to set off straight away, which meant us setting off into quite a bad storm just off Chile at that point.
And then even when we were eventually leaving Point Nemo, we had to hightail it to get out of the way of another hurricane.
Yeah.
So it was, it's pretty sketchy down there. There's not a right lot going on apart from hurricanes, to be honest, looking at it.
If you look at windy.com or any of the weather systems down there, you just see it's just, storm after storm after storm.
Red circles,
red circles, continuous.
Yeah. And so I guess that kind of leads us nicely into the next question of how long did it take to get there and what were the conditions like going out? Right,
so you're going to get some PTSD right now. So Dad and I don't spend a huge amount of time on boats. I think you've probably spent more time on boats than at sea than me because I'm at zero pretty much. And all the questions when we were going out there was people asking, how do you kind of get on at sea? And I didn't have an answer for them because we'd never done it. The answer, which we now know, is dreadfully. So it started off, I think we left Puerto Montt in Chile at 9 p.m. and you kind of follow these guide boats. They've got
pilots.
That's the one. You follow kind of a pilot boat out until you get to the sea. And that went on for quite a while. And we gone into bed and we sat in bed, and then bang, straight on 2:30 in the morning, like on the dot, straight away awake. And we're in about 6, 7, 8 meter waves constantly. And we were I was in bed, and you kind of think, actually, this is a bit rough because you're swinging backwards and forwards. And then I still managed to sleep a little bit. And then you wake up, stand up, bang, straight in the toilet being sick. I am not exaggerating when I say you stand up, you need to then just start walking to the toilet because you're going to be sick. So that happens. Then you kind of sit down, you think that was a bit rough. Wait 30 seconds, bang, sick again. And then you kind of get back into bed and you think this isn't going to be great, but I'll get over it. A couple of hours, there's only so much you can kind of throw up. That wasn't true. So for the next 60 hours, so like 2.5 days, I'm not joking when I say anytime we stood up, we'd throw up straight away. And it wasn't even like a little delay. It was pretty much stand up, you need to start walking to the toilet. Because we were in those waves, which were, let's call them, 7 meters, 8 meters, which is bigger than a house. It's bigger than your diving board at your local pool. And the swell was 13 seconds. So every 13 seconds, you're going down 8 meters and up 8 meters for 2 days straight. Which was awful, to be perfectly honest with you. It's not really
absolutely awful,
just awful. Yeah. I mean, we're glad that some of the other people on the boat were struggling, and you said one of the crew struggled as well, didn't he?
One of the crew, Sergio, he confided in me near the end. He said he'd been on the boat for 9 years, working on boats for 9 years. But more than that, he grew up on a small island where, just going to school, he went in a boat. And he did say that the first 2 days of that voyage, it's the first time he was ever feeling ill on the boat.
My goodness. So you may have checked off 2 records, possibly the first of humans to swim through this coordinate and the first people to make him sick.
Yeah. But often they say, aquatic and people who spend time on boats know that in theory 3 days is when you get your sea legs. So after 3 days it did, like the vomiting stuff did subside, and we had like industrial strength sickness patches, which would like bring down a horse or something just to kind of make you feel stable. And then I think, so in total it was 10 days to get to the pole?
9.5, 10 days to get to the pole. And we had plans. We thought, well, 10 days is quite a long time. So we thought, they've got a little room with some gym equipment. We'll do that. We downloaded, language courses. You're going to be doing some sort of masterclass. I was going to be doing some work on a laptop. No. Because you're on the verge of nausea the whole time. And you look out and, people saying, what's it like? Sea. What can you see? Sea. So well, is anything else right? You're not getting this, are you? There's just sea. And you're literally looking out, and sometimes there's waves fill the whole window, and sometimes the sky fills the whole window, then it's back to waves, and then something splashes up, and it's just sea. So after 3 days, you've got your sea legs. You're not actually physically being ill, but it just felt that way, didn't it?
Yeah, just constantly for the entire duration and that first bit, you just feel sick. You sit down to have a meal, absolutely starving after not eating for 60 hours. You sit down to eat a meal, one chip, bang, right, yeah, I feel sick again now. Just absolutely awful.
And we got to the point where we were kind of celebrating because the waves went down to 5 meters. And if you think about it, that's still quite a way.
Once you're already experiencing sort of swells and shifting about like that, you probably don't need to throw a treadmill into the mix, do you? It's just another.
Oh God, yeah. They just thought,
and there was just a very small portal in the gym thing, so that didn't really get done. And then trying to look down and concentrate on your computer screen, that wasn't really working. So you spent a lot of time just sitting, staring out of the window, looking at the sea and more sea and sea and sea and sea. Because if you do your school maths, if you work out the distances I told you before, that turns out with pi r squared, you're in the middle of 22 million square kilometres of sea with no islands.
You mentioned there the industrial strength sickness patches, and I think that's something that you know to pack when you've been at sea a few times. So how long did it take you to plan for this trip?
We didn't know about these patches. So luckily the boat had some for us.
Well, I had some like just over the counter boots ones, but it just did nothing.
Didn't scratch.
Whereas this, I think it's a German boat, and the German owner knows that people struggle, so they have like the really good stuff that, you know.
That's what you need.
Yeah, just like, I mean, it worked to an extent, but I could have done with it working a little bit more. But yeah.
But the planning, I'd been kind of planning to do it or trying to find a way to do it for getting on 3 years. Trying to find the right option because, first of all, I'd like to get to Point Nemo. That's one of my targets. How are you going to get there? So I started thinking about what sort of boat you go in. There was a possibility to go out in a racing yacht. You can actually hire these things, which I didn't know. But just the thought of being in a yacht going in those seas.
I was just about to mention, imagine if we'd ended up on like a racing yacht going through that.
But if you ever look at their videos and things, they're almost, when in the southern Pacific, they're almost living in their survival suits. That would have been, so we'd have been in bed in our survival suits.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
For 21 days. So that wasn't really on the cards. And I thought, well, the most stable thing in those waters has got to be a tanker or something. Maybe, let's see if there's a tanker going that way. But of course, it's nowhere near any shipping lanes at all. No boat of its with a captain in its right head would be going that way anyway. So it took a while to try and find reasonable opportunities. And then through an intermediary, I heard about the Hansi Explorer, which is a full-on expedition yacht owned by one of the guys who works with National Geographic. And it takes people down to the Antarctic quite regularly. It's got an ice rating of 3, which is quite good, but a nice solid vessel. Not too big that we wouldn't be able to get into the sea because it's small enough to be able to launch Zodiacs off the back, and not too small to be thrown everywhere. It was going to be repositioning from Chile up to French Polynesia, which is ideal. So we kind of hired it to go off course a little bit down to Point Nemo.
And you mentioned the Zodiac, so was that for completing part of the trip?
Oh yeah, so the Zodiacs were to enable us to get into the water, because Hansi Explorer, it's a small expedition boat in a way, but it's still quite a big boat. You wouldn't be abseiling off the side or anything like that.
So it's primarily for diving, isn't it? That's what its primary usage is. Well, secondary. They do a lot of diving with it, so they've got the Zodiac and stacks of diving equipment. So yeah, they're good at getting you in the water, kind of thing.
Okay, so you get down into your Zodiac and then you go to the specific coordinates and you guys got in the water, right?
That's right. That was the idea, because all the other poles of inaccessibility that I've been to, I stand there with the flag of the nation that I'm in and take a photo. So I was thinking, well, there isn't anything for the Pacific Ocean. So I was thinking, what are you going to put up? There's various Pacific island flags, but that kind of defeats the object because they're islands. So came up with the idea, didn't we, of doing the maritime flags. Each one's got a letter associated with it. It can mean I'm in distress or keep away, I'm turning the boat or stuff like that. But each one's got a letter. So you might see some videos or some images of us holding a stream of flags, and they spell out Nemo.
Oh, fantastic. Yes, I've seen the photo, but I didn't know about the individual flags.
It's Nemo. So well, let's go in for a swim, which is why we're heading there to try and get into the weather window. It was still 2.5 metre waves, so it was still quite high. Just got in there, put on the wetsuit, pair of flippers, and off the side of the Zodiac into the water. Yeah,
I saw some fantastic photos of you both in the water. So
yeah.
How did it feel in that moment?
I mean, I personally wasn't great. I don't like deep water. So I didn't put any goggles on. I'm not putting my head in the water. Just keep your head up, breathe, smile through it. Because it's 4 kilometres deep, apparently, which is just...
It's a lot to fathom.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of people that aren't a fan of that. But yeah, no, it was cool to be there, for sure. Bit surreal after like the ordeal of the 10 days that we'd had getting there. But then you remember to look around, you just think there's nothing for however many thousands of kilometres like this is. Yeah, it's a bit weird to be swimming in a place like this. Yeah.
It'd be amazing to have that viewpoint, knowing that no one else is really ever going to see.
There's nobody anywhere near. And like we looked on the radar, I mean, how big did the radar cover? And there was
90 nautical miles.
Yeah, in each direction. And no boats, nothing even close. Yeah. So yeah, it was pretty cool. Pretty cool to be there, to be fair.
Now, I'd expected with 4 kilometres depth, because I'm less bothered by the depth, because 100 metres is just as bad, really. In fact, if 4 kilometres, whatever's down there, it's further away, isn't it? I was expecting it to be really kind of black or, a really dark green, like having seen the Atlantic Ocean. But it's a fantastic blue. I was amazed by it. Just looking down, it's almost an iridescent blue. Wow. Amazing. Very beautiful.
I can imagine that must be incredible. And I believe while you were there, you also took some samples. So what was that for?
Yeah, well, there's two more. So I took some samples before we got into the water. We're going to get those analysed for microplastics because this is, in theory, the furthest point from humans. So just to see if we've managed to pollute the oceans that far away from us. The other thing when we were in the ocean doing the swim, was in the ocean before we got the flags out, and the videographer was in taking a film from beneath of me swimming. And we came up and there were, all these birds had appeared. Now, the scientists have always thought that this was an area of low biodiversity because there's three large ocean currents all come together, South Pacific Gyre, Gyre, I think that's how it's pronounced. And there's not supposed to be any fish or anything in this area. But all these seabirds suddenly appeared from nowhere, and we're talking about 20 to 30.
Oh, there was loads.
20 to 30.
Yeah, absolutely loads of them.
One noticeable one was an albatross. And
there were there were quite a few albatross in the end. There were about 6 or 7 albatross and about 20 of these smaller blackbirds just flying about. One
took a particular interest in us. And by particular interest, I mean really close interest. So it came down, and Adam, the videographer, didn't actually see this, but you know when geese take off from the water, they kind of run across it? This thing did that across the sea towards him. He was looking the other way at the time. Without a doubt, it was a kind of attack. And then this thing came within a metre of us and just wasn't bothered. It was looking very menacing. And do you know the wingspan of an albatross?
I mean, it's huge. I can't.
Yeah, it's more than 3 metres.
Gosh.
And they weigh 12 kilos themselves, so they're quite big birds. Massive wingspan.
Huge beak
and
as
the
well.
The beak is what was bothering me. It's 15 centimetres long. It's hooked and it's serrated, because it's plucking fish out of thing. So it would just, and to it, we're just like a football-sized thing bobbing on the top of the ocean. We tried to scare it away. I tried to kick at it, but I had flippers on, so I couldn't get my feet up properly. And in the end, the Zodiac came across to chase it away, and it wasn't bothered.
It did not care.
It was only the last few centimetres it actually got out of the way. So, it was I'm king out here. I'm apex predator, and you're food.
Because I was in the Zodiac whilst this was happening. And I'm not joking, it's as soon as Dad and Adam got in the water, it was straight over to them. And I saw it fly over their head, maybe about a metre above their head. I'm not sure if they both saw it. And then, it landed, and just watching my dad get attacked by an albatross at the most remote place on the entire planet. You're thinking, are we definitely in the right place? The captain hasn't just taken us a couple 100 miles up the shore and just brought it there. But no, it was really, And like you said, when I was in the Zodiac, we drove at it and smacked around it with an oar, and it just did not care at all. It did not care. It just kept looking at you two, and then it finally left when the Zodiac driver just went, right, let's play a game of chicken, and he flew out the way.
A game of albatross.
Yeah. But I mean, apparently they fly at 120 kilometers an hour. This species of albatross. So, and that one, I think it's Southern Royal, is what we were told.
Oh, that's right.
It's one of the biggest breeds as well. One of the biggest things. So it was just mad. But we'd also had a few of them following the boat for the days previous. We'd always seen, if you look out, there was 2 flying around the boat, and they looked kind of adolescent-y, didn't they? But
just kind of gliding along behind the boat, taking the thermals or the wind from the boat.
So it wasn't completely surprised to see them there, but them attacking you was it's just absolutely wild.
I suppose one of the surprises is to see so many other birds as well, because that would imply to me there's fish in the area, which we'd been told there weren't. So maybe that could be reconsidered. We need a marine biologist to discuss that sometime.
Yeah, and we didn't have a fishing rod with us either, so couldn't take any samples of that one, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing observation, and it'll be interesting to see the science that comes out of this. I wouldn't have thought, that albatross would be high on your list of things to worry about when visiting.
No.
So little did you know that was one of the more immediate dangers.
Yeah,
didn't plan for that one, did you?
Concerning, because you're in the ocean thinking, well, it's deep, there's hurricanes coming in, we've got these 2.5 metre waves to try and swim in, which is awkward. Last thing I expected was a flipping albatross trying to gobble us up.
And I mean, I guess it's funny, but also when you're that far away from any kind of immediate healthcare, even small things must be a bit of a concern. You don't want to get like nasty cuts.
It's a risk, it's a risk that we hadn't really thought about. But yes, I mean, if anything had happened to us there or to the boat at all, you're so far from help. It would have been days, literally days before anything could have got to you. Thousands of kilometres for any boats to get to.
Well, I mean, in theory, we'd done the trip, hadn't we, for as anything as close, and it was 10 days.
Yeah.
So nothing's going to get there quicker than 10 days, really, is it? Which, yeah, I mean, that would have been bleak, but thankfully I didn't have any issues. So, yeah, that was thankful.
I'm glad that it wasn't derailed by an albatross.
No, that would have been, that would have been an interesting one to say why. Well, we would have got there at least.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It would have made the news.
Yeah. You get a dent into your head at Point Nemo from albatross, made it, and then get a dent.
Just another world record.
Yeah, that's it.
And I mean, so you've mentioned the poles of inaccessibility, and I'd like to talk about those because you've checked off quite a few.
Yes.
And when you're visiting these places, what are the kind of specific concerns and dangers you have to take into account, knowing how far away they are?
Each one has its own dangers. So I was the first person to the pole of inaccessibility in Africa, which is in the Central African Republic, on the border with Congo and South Sudan. It's a bit of a fighty region. The risk there is all man-made. We did Antarctica together, the southern pole of inaccessibility. That's all environmental. The average temperature at the pole is minus 58 centigrade. And what not a lot of people realise, it's at altitude. The South Pole itself is at about 3,000 metres, which is kind of your upper slopes in an alpine ski resort. The pole of inaccessibility is about 3,700. So you've got low oxygen, low temperature. There's nothing there. So there's when you're trying to get there, there's no weather that you can determine. There's no weather stations or anything like that. There's certainly no runway. So there it's environmental. And for Nemo, it was just its remoteness. Nobody's coming to help you because you're so far from anything. So each pole has its own dangers.
And if it's not an unfair question, do you think one stands out as having been particularly difficult?
Ooh, that's a good loaded question.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I like that one.
I think those three, as I say, they're difficult for different reasons. North and South America and Australia weren't quite as difficult. They have their own difficulties, for sure. No, for me, it's the whole bunch together. You can't pick a favourite child, can you? Or can you?
Well, there's only one child here. And I mean, if you go into that, Axel, my brother, did the North American pole with him, where you just get in a car, drive there, take a picture and leave. I get dragged to the one down in Antarctica, which takes us like 2 years and 2 different trips and minus 70. I get taken to the one in Nemo. We're on a boat for 3 weeks, getting chucked around and getting in the sea. So maybe Axel's a favourite child. He gets put in less danger.
It just doesn't count, Axel, until you've been attacked by a bird.
Yeah, there you go.
I think that's the rule.
Heard it there first. I love that one.
So what's left and what's next?
That's always a question.
That is literally the question you always get. I love it.
Whenever I've ticked off a pole of inaccessibility, the first question I get asked is, what's next? At which point, Mika now has to do a shot. So thanks for asking.
All right. Well, good.
Yeah, so what's next for me? Yeah, it looks like a vodka. Thank you for that. Yeah.
So the two remaining poles are Eurasia, because it's one landmass. That's in northwest China. It's in a politically sensitive area, so getting permissions to go to that area is proving difficult. The northern one, which is ironically the first one I tried to do, we got stuck in Svalbard going out to Borneo. Do you know what Borneo is? So Borneo is the ironic name given to the landing strip that they prepare on the ice in the Arctic. They look for a 2-kilometre stretch of ice that hasn't broken up for 2 years, because it breaks up every summer. Big chunk, small chunk. So they're looking for a piece that hasn't, a 2-kilometre piece that hasn't broken up for 2 years. And they build a landing strip on it. People jump out of a plane with tractors and make a landing strip. Wow. Those people are usually Russian. And so they call it a Russian base. As Sod's law would dictate, the only plane capable at the time of getting passengers and freight to Borneo was Ukrainian. So it was all kicking off at that time in the elections taking place in Ukraine. And the Ukrainians refused to go out there at the time because it was supposedly a Russian base, or they were claiming a Russian base, even if it wasn't. I think the whole organisation is owned by a Norwegian gentleman. So we didn't actually get to go out to the Northern Pole in those days, just got stuck in Svalbard for, I think it was about 3 weeks, which is when I heard one of these phrases that you never hear. Somebody in Svalbard said, I'm going down to Oslo for the weekend to save some money. Anyway, so I still have to do the Northern Pole, and currently Russia claims airspace over that, so that's going to be a bit more difficult as well.
I'm retired. I'm done. Yeah, I've done my stint. Axel can do the next one, or somebody else. I think that's me for POIs. Yeah.
But you've done the two extreme.
I've done the two extreme ones, yeah, and I think I can tick off the most remote place on land and the most remote place on sea, so that's plenty for me. Yeah, I'm good.
Job done.
Job done for me, definitely.
Have you got any shout outs to do from the trip?
I think we should give a shout out to Adam Watson and Doug Shields, the two guys that came with us as well. They don't get enough mentions, so
that's true.
Shout out, boys. And then everybody on the Hans Explorer, the captain, the whole team, they were absolutely incredible. So, yeah.
But if you look on Brown Co UK, you can see most of my expeditions there. And inaccessibility.net is quite specifically about the poles of inaccessibility. It's like kind of my own invention, because I started thinking, well, if you can have a pole of inaccessibility for any continent, you can have them for an island. So I've been to like the UK one, and we did a good friend of ours that we met in Antarctica, went to visit him in Iceland, did all that. So I've come up with the idea of doing points of inaccessibility. So for any country or state with fixed borders, because it doesn't have to be an ocean, can have a point in the country that's furthest from the borders or the ocean. So that's just kind of a side thing. So when I go to a new country, I try and get to the centre or the point of inaccessibility of those countries. It's just a different way of travelling.
Well, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us about your experiences. It's been amazing to hear, and thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
It's all good.
Arriving at Point Nemo.